I'm going to change gears here just a little bit on the sensor technology, and right now we're going with canopy temperature. So we're going to switch gears from soil moisture and start talking about canopy temperature. Why do we want to measure canopy temperatures? What I'm holding here in my hand, this is our temperature probe. And what this does, it takes about 10,000 readings of the crop canopy temperature across the season, depending on how long we have in the field. So we have it in the field approximately 100 to 150 days, and it takes approximately 100 readings per day. And so we know what the status, plant water status, based on the canopy temperatures of what that crop is doing. So if you've got, just for an example, before I get into my slides, if you've got a 100-degree day, our typical 95 to 100-degree day out here, you could have a wide range of temperatures in your crop, depending on the plant water status of your crop. Let's just take cotton, for example. If your cotton's well watered, and based on your soil water content, if you're kind of high there on the graph, your afternoon temperatures of your cotton crop may only be 85 to 90 degrees. That cotton crop is very happy at that stage. But also, as it gets into water status deficit, that temperature is going to start climbing up. And so you can actually get close to ambient temperatures and even climb well above ambient temperatures with your canopy temperatures. So looking at these temperatures of where you are in relation to ambient gives you a pretty good idea of the water status of your crop. So we like to use the tagline that the plant is the sensor. We're all trying to maximize the production of that plant, and so we're trying to let that plant tell us what the water status is. So we think that the canopy temperatures are they're an integrated measurement that takes into account both the environmental conditions and what it has banked in the soil for soil moisture. And so the plant combines all of that information and it converts it into a canopy temperature. So it reveals how the plants are responding to that environment, both below the ground and above the ground. Whether it's 100 degrees outside with a 30-mile-an-hour wind with low relative humidity conditions, it's incorporating all that and responding with the canopy temperature. We provide this canopy temperature all season long. So we have 100 readings per day all season long. So we know very precisely how that crop is responding on a daily basis. Here's the basics of our tools. With the crop sensor in the field, we take the temperatures. They're remote sensors. We can put them out about 1,000 feet away from our base station. Strategically place them across the field, depending on where the grower wants to put them. We can put them in those places that tend to be the high producing, the low producing, and the medium producing areas of those fields. And those can be indicators of how that crop is responding. All the data is transmitted wirelessly to the base station, and the base station calls it in every 25 minutes to our servers. At the base station, we also have a complete weather station where we can measure rainfall, temperatures, solar radiation, wind speed, and wind direction. Here's a 7-day, I believe it's a 7-day snapshot of some different trials we're looking at here. Actually, it's about 10 days. But the blue line on top is the ambient conditions, and these are some different treatments. We're trying to apply different amounts of stress. So a lot of our customers are research groups that want to apply different amounts of stress to their crops out in the field. And we can see we get a different temperature response from these different water regimes that we've got on the crop. We turn that temperature curve into what we call a stress index. And so our stress index is, the higher the bar, the more stress that plant is under, or the higher the temperatures of that crop accumulates over a daily period. So this was from that trial in Spain we were looking at, where we can see we're coming along here. We have some fairly high stress periods here. And these are the different stress levels that we're trying to impose on that research crop. just a map of some of the locations we have across the U.S. and on down to a field level. This is an almond irrigation trial we have out in near Bakersfield, where we're looking at the temperature response of these crops based on their water. Now, this is a California example, I know it, but they're facing the same water restrictions we're looking at. They're on a different scale. They're probably on 3 to 4x of what we're using out here. They're putting on about 5 acre-feet on these permanent tree crops out there in California, and they're looking down the barrel of having to cut that tremendously. The amount of water they've got available. And so we're working with them, trying to find at what levels can they reduce their irrigation capacities and maintain good plant temperatures and still maintain the production that they're after. You know, it's interesting, based on different species, and even a well-watered plant, out here in some of the trials we're doing, we've got olive trees right next to almond trees. And those olive trees, as you know, they're just a tough plant. They're very stingy with water. They don't want to give water up. And so on a typical 105 degree day out in the San Joaquin, the olive trees would be 5 to 10 degrees hotter than the almond trees. They've got a very waxy leaf cuticle, and they're just not wanting to let that water out. They keep that water, and they're going to maintain that water much more so than, say, an almond tree that is going to transpire. Some of the crops we're looking at here, all the major row crops, soybeans from the Delta, cotton, corn, wheat, peanuts. We've seen the same water response and temperature response, irregardless of the crop that we're looking at. Here's some of the trees out in California. We've had to modify some of our equipment to get it up. You know, getting a sensor up above a 3-foot cotton crop is one thing, but getting it above a 35-foot tall walnut tree is something else. Just another one of our graphs looking here at the different temperatures. In this particular example, this is from some of the tree data that we would take looking at, where it was the temperature was about 95 degrees outside. We had a temperature range of about 90 to 95, depending on how much water we put on those trees. We're also looking at a greenhouse application for our tools as we're watering crops in the greenhouse based on canopy temperature. So we've got solenoids hooked up to the watering system, and we trigger the watering system as the crop reaches the thresholds that we assign to that. This is from some of the Texas Tech regression data from last year. We're putting different amounts of water on there. And on this particular day, it was a 100-degree day in the afternoon, and our temperatures ranged from about 94 up to well over 100 degrees based on the different amounts of water we applied to that crop. So with the crop canopy temperatures and measuring this on a continual basis, we can measure the timing, the intensity, and the duration of the stress, and accumulate that over the season, because your final yield is just an accumulation of what happens every day all season long, and we can accumulate that stress and have a pretty good idea of what your final yield could be at the end of the season. So looking at some of Eddie's data, the guys before me have done a good job of illustrating these rainfall events. We've got stress units here on the left-hand axis. So more stress is higher canopy temperatures and more stress for that crop. Eddie's, what we typically target, 1,000 stress units is kind of a good number we try to target and keep it under for maximum production. And you can see besides a few days back here in early, about the 10th, 12th of July, we stayed down in that around 1,000 stress unit range. And not that cotton can't take some hot weather, it can, and it can withstand some temperatures of maybe some canopy temperatures up above 90, 95 degrees, but it's those successive days of canopy temperatures. If you have 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 days successive of high canopy temperatures above 95, that's where you start to really see some yield production dropping off. So with Eddie's sensor we have out in Eddie's field, it's shown that it stayed relatively constant, except we had these cool days where we measured basically zero stress. After the rainfall events in mid-July, we had a cooling event here, and then some more rainfall here back a little while ago. Looking at the corn with the pivot and the drip, I'm showing both the pivot and the drip. I hope you can see it on the slides, but the pivot is the blue line, and it was planted earlier, so we got the sensors in the pivot earlier than we did in the drip. But once we had both of them in there, you can see on a pretty regular basis, the temperatures on the drip corn were cooler, and I believe he was putting on about a ½ inch per day on the drip, and he's putting about 1/3 of an inch a day on the pivot. And that showed up in a canopy temperature, or how we accumulate stress on a daily basis, that the plants in the drip were just a little less stressed than the plants in the pivot. So we're going to say that that corn there on the drip is going to make a fair amount more corn than the pivot site. Very similar data with the sorghum, but you can see, and of course it was planted later. We got the sensors in there later, had the rainfall event, but it stayed relatively cool all season long, and so far, Eddie, that sorghum is looking very good and has very high yield potential. That's my basic introduction into plant canopy temperature 101. If anybody has any question, I'll be here. You can ask me later.
Any questions right now?
Thank you very much.